Hey guys, I'm Hellhound, and just reviewed Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers. So I'm continuing with my marathon of Halloween movies that I didn't review a couple of years ago. And so next we got Halloween H20. Yeah, stupid title, like because it's 20 years later. H2O, get it? Blood is thicker than water, I think is the tagline or something. I don't know. If you watch my ranking video, which is one of the first videos I did on here under the Hellhounds review show, I said that this was one of the worst, and this is my least favorite. I used to really dislike this movie, but you know what? It's actually grown on me more recently. I had a marathon of all the Halloween movies last Halloween, a year ago. So, and I actually liked it. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I used to. I have like kind of a newfound respect for this. I think it's a decent follow up. I think it's a good sequel. I like seeing Jamie Lee Curtis returns as Laurie Strode. I like seeing her story continued. It pretty much ignores parts 4, 5, and 6, and I guess 3 too. But some people insist that it doesn't, and she just faked her death. The car accident, what they mentioned in part 4, so they do kind of connect it that way. And say they did happen, but that she just doesn't want anything to do with that former life. Her illegitimate daughter, Jamie Lloyd, is dead now, according to part 6. But I think it ignores 4, 5, and 6, in my opinion. I think it directly follows part 2. It doesn't explain how Michael Myers survived the fire at the end of part 2, but I think that they figured, well, the fourth movie spent so much time explaining that, we don't want to tell that story yet again, so we're just going to say, yeah, he's back, he survived it somehow, and he's been looking for his sister Laurie ever since. So, I think that's pretty much where it goes. But yeah, I used to really dislike this movie, and I still have the same problems with it, but I actually like it a lot more than I used to, and I don't think it's one of the worst. I consider, Halloween 1, 2, and 4 the best, and then there's kind of like the middle ground where we have, I'm not going to count 3, I'm just talking about the Michael Myers movies, the middle ground, the ones that are like, okay, they're good, but they're not as great as, 1, 2, and 4. And that's 5, 6, and H2O. 5 being the worst of those. That one's way below 6 and 7. I used to rank them. I used to say Curse of Michael Myers was my 4th favorite after 1, 2, and 4. But I think these days, I think H2O might be my 4th favorite. Now, this movie has no balls though, and that's my biggest problem with it. Curse of Michael Myers is convoluted and as mixed up as it was. It was a lot more. It had a lot more balls to it. It was a lot more brutal. This movie could almost be a PG-13. It's kind of like a diet horror movie. It has no balls, and it has more in common with a Scream sequel. Like even the cover where they have all the actors on the front. This is what they started doing with typical modern generic movies. They started doing that in the late '90s, early 2000s. The Scream movies, they had all the actors on the front. I know you did last summer. The urban legend movies, Cherry Falls, all those awful movies. Though I do like the first Scream, and I kind of like I know you did last summer too. But yeah, this one seems like a Scream sequel. And Rick Rosenthal. I'm sorry, that's Resurrection. No, Steve Miner, I'm sorry, who directed the excellent Friday the 13th Parts 2 and 3, and is also responsible for some other great horror films. Probably could have done a little better. He's the one that directed this movie. I do kind of expect better from Steve Miner, but I do like this movie. It is good to see Jamie Lee Curtis again. I'm glad she returned to the franchise, That was really cool. Most actors who get their start with a horror film, they get famous and they think they're too good for it. Like Kevin Bacon would never return to Friday the 13th, and Johnny Depp may have returned for the cameo in Freddy's Dead, but that was kind of before he became a big star. But that was nice of her to return to the franchise, the thing that gave her start. Where she started out at return as Laurie Strode. It's cool to see her all grown up, a little more. I think her performance is better in this. The first 2 films she's just kind of a teenager, and this movie you get to see a lot more of her, and you get to really know the Laurie character. That's what I like about it so much. That's what really drew me to this movie. Michael Myers this time is played by Chris Durand. Is it Chris Durand or Brad Lorre? think it's Chris Duran this time. Brad Laurie plays him in Resurrection. If I have that backwards, I apologize, but I don't really care. Because the only Michael Myers the only actors that played him that I really like are Nick Castle, Dick Warlock, and George P. Wilbur. Still, the shape is done pretty well in this movie. He's not, made into a pussy like some of the other movies make him. I don't care for the mask that much, but I guess it's an improvement over like movies like Part 5. It doesn't explain how he survived. At one point, Laurie's son, she has a son in this movie, played by Josh Hartnett, and he says, "Didn't you see him die?" She says, "Well, I didn't really stick around to see the ashes." So that's pretty much the only explanation that we get as he returns. But yeah, I kind of like the setting. I like how Michael Myers is stalking people throughout his school. Laurie does have a son. He doesn't really go after him yet. He's trying to finish Laurie off first, and there's no mention of him in the next movie, but more on that later. This movie's just a lot more. I used to hate it, but I actually like it a lot now. It's a lot more focused. It's a lot more simple. It's a lot more balanced and less uneven than the convoluted mess that was Curse of Michael Myers. See my previous video for more on that. So I appreciate that. Now I think I like this one even better these days, despite liking the sixth movie as my fourth favorite for so long. Seeing Laurie's great. Even her real life mother, Janet Leigh, the star of Psycho, the original Psycho, makes a cameo appearance, and she even drives the same car that she drove in Psycho. And it starts playing the Psycho music. I thought that was a cool little nod, to the horror genre, for horror fans. A cool little Easter egg. A lot of people hate that, think it's cheesy and campy, but I don't care. It's fine. The rest of the cast does okay. Yeah, Josh Hartnett, LL Cool J's in this movie too. He's cool, I guess. There's some cool kills. It's like an ice skate in somebody's head or something. This isn't fresh in my mind because it's been like a year since I watched it. But it just feels kind of, I don't know, it feels like, again, it feels too watered down, too diet. It doesn't have, it's not as brutal as the other entries. It feels like Michael Myers walked on the set of Dawson's Creek, which I later found out that Steve Miner was behind TV's Dawson's Creek, so no wonder it feels so familiar. And yes, it does feel like a Scream sequel. It does feel like those late 90s, early 2000s horror films, so diet, so watered down, so PG-13 seeming. I still have the same problems with it, but I still do like the movie. I think there's more good than bad. And again, after the nightmare that was Part 6 and all this crazy edits and all this alternate cuts and stuff, which I still like. The things that are good about Part 6 are really good, so I do appreciate it, but there's some things that are really, really bad. Now, this movie is a little more, there's nothing really, really bad about it. There's nothing, too amazing, but again, Laurie Strode's character returning and played again by Jamie Lee Curtis is great. Seeing Michael Myers again is just great. I always like that. I'm glad they did make a sequel, and I think ignoring the whole Thorn saga, the Thorn thing was the right thing to do. And a lot of people consider parts 4, 5, and 6 the Thorn trilogy, but I don't really include part 4 in that because, for one thing, I love part 4 and I hate the Thorn bullshit. And another thing is they don't really mention Thorn. Did he even have the tattoo? I don't think he even had the tattoo until part 5. So they didn't come up with that shitty idea until that film, and then expanded on it in part 6. So I think ignoring the whole Thorn thing, the whole curse, the thing with the druids and the cult that controls Michael Myers was the right thing to do. The series was kind of declining and it was going downhill. It was becoming a mess. If they'd continued that story, this movie probably would have just sucked. And I don't like when Michael Myers has an origin. I don't like when there's people controlling him. I think he's just insane. He was in a mental institution. He's just pure evil. He's an incarnation of just sinister, and he just wants to kill. He has no conscience. He has no emotions. He's unrelatable. Nobody can relate to him. He's even more complex than killers like Jason Voorhees and Freddy, because he's just completely insatiably evil. And I think this movie is pretty true to the Michael Myers character. There's nobody controlling him this time. No weird origin based with the druids and the Celtics and stuff. I think they kind of tried to, with Curse of Michael Myers, I think they kind of tried to connect it to Halloween 3 so that movie would be more relevant in the series, but it didn't work. As much as I love stuff like that, not with Michael Myers, And I'm glad that they ignored that. I'm glad that this is, for all intents and purposes, like the real part 3 of, according to this movie, even though I love part 4 way better than this, when you watch this movie, it unfortunately ignores that entry, and this is like the real third part, seeing as Halloween 3, the Season of the Witch, didn't continue the Myers story, and this one ignores all the others. So what you can actually do is kind of interesting, is you can watch the first 2 movies and pretend like the end's there. Michael Myers died in the explosion. Or you can say continues and watch 4, 5, and 6, and I guess it kind of ends with part 6. Michael Myers gets away at the end. He's free. Nobody's controlling him. Dr. Loomis, I guess, becomes his keeper, according to the producer's cut. Again, more info on that in the last video. Or you can watch parts 1 and 2, and it doesn't end there, and it continues with H20. And then what you do is you watch the first 10 or 15 minutes of Resurrection, then turn it off right away. As soon as Michael Myers kills Laurie Strode, turn that piece of shit off, because the rest of the movie sucks. I'll get to that in my next video. And then you can just have your own, you have like different continuities. It's kind of like one of the Give Yourselves Goosebumps books, or one of those interactive books that say, turn to page 3 for this, or turn to page 122 for that. Just you can do that with the Halloween series. You kind of do it with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series too. The continuities all over the place, and like there's sequels that pretend the other ones don't exist. And I think Friday the 13th is the only series where all the movies are canonical and a strict continuity, even though there is all kinds of continuity errors and some uneven kind of plot holes there. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, kind of going off a rant here. Anyway, I do recommend Halloween H20. Again, I hated this for years, but I actually like it now, and it probably is my 4th favorite, though it kind of teeter-totters between Curse of Michael Myers and this one. Both of them have their flaws, but I think both of them kind of make up for it, though, with certain strengths, and I think that this one comes out a little stronger these days. So sorry if you disagree with that. It's so cool seeing Laurie come face-to-face with Michael Myers again. It also kind of depends on... do you want to see Dr. Loomis's story continued with 4, 5, and 6, or do you want to see Laurie Strode's story continued with H20? I personally like Dr. Loomis way better. I think he's a way more interesting character, one of my favorite protagonists of all time. Though Laurie is too, of course. But yeah, I'd kind of rather see him in a sequel than her, honestly. If they do make a new Halloween, I don't know where it's going to take place. Will it take place after the original part 2, or after Curse of Michael Myers, or after Resurrection, or after Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, or what? Or just be another stupid remake. I mean, who knows? And, I'd like to see the character of Dr. Loomis come back before Laurie, because they fucked her up so bad with Scout Taylor Compton and the Rob Zombie movies. But then again, more info on that soon enough. Oh, God, pray for me. Pray for me, guys, because I got to revisit the Rob Zombie films. Oh, no. But yeah, anyway, rambling again. I think this video's had a little bit too much tangents already, but, what can I say? There's not really that much to say about this movie, other than I like the way they continue the story. I like the setting with, like, the school and stuff. Some good characters. Laurie Strode's great. Jamie Lee Curtis was a great... I'm so glad she returned to the franchise. Again, this movie does have more in common with, more of the modern, typical, generic movies that are coming around at the same time. Just kind of copied, kind of rode on their coattails, I guess. Feels like a Scream sequel. Feels like a watered-down PG-13 Dawson's Creek episode. But, what can you do? It's bad. I guess it's better than the MTV Curse of Michael Myers crap fest with all the, all the complex things going on. You can barely follow it. At least this movie's easy to follow. But yeah, guys, alright, well, that's H20. Halloween H20, 20 years later. Yeah, this is exactly 20 years after the original 1978 movie. Just like Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, was 10 years of the original movie. So, which continuity do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think it ended at part 2? Do you think it ended at part 6? Do you think part 4 continued the story better? Do you think H20 continued the story better? Let me know. And tune in next time. And we're going to get to Halloween shit erection. Alright guys, I'm Hellhound, and wish me luck, because that's coming next. I think I'll go drive my car off a freaking cliff.